What's up, everyone? I'm GKB, your friendly neighborhood governor. I'm also joined today by my good friend, Mr. BrewtalKnight. Today on Gamers Knows Best, we'll be having a great discussion and review of the much anticipated game called Inside. Could it be, as some may claim, the Game of the Year candidate? I don't know. Let's get into the video and find out. Alright, before we get into this review, I want to let everyone know that this will have spoilers. We can't have a good discussion about a game if we sidestep parts of the game. So I'm warning everyone now, spoiler alert, you have been warned. There will be spoilers. So first up, let's give you some of the details on Inside before we get into how we liked or didn't like the game. Inside is a 2.5D puzzle platformer developed by Playdead Studios. Inside is Playdead's second title following Limbo. You play as a young boy that explores this interesting world by walking, running, swimming, and interacting with the environment. As you progress through the game, you gain a few more abilities that add some unique gameplay that we will go ahead and talk about later in the show. Alright, so let's get into our first category for our discussion / review, and that's the eye candy. What did we think of the graphical prowess of Inside? So I'd like to start off by saying I think the world has beautiful environments. Playdead Studios just knows how to do so much, and I think they learned so much from Limbo, but they could do so much with so little in this game. They really know how to build tension and atmosphere in this game with like the lighting, just simple colors, and they kind of catch your eye too. Like some of the characters are very like have some red and stuff like that, so it really just pinpoints to what they want you to look at. Also, I thought the reflections and lighting is just fantastic and top notch. Like some of the volumetric lighting, like when you're in the sub and underwater, it's just awesome where it's just going up and down. And you can see like the particulates of the water and some of the dirty stuff in the water. I thought it was just fantastic. It just really brings you into, what they want to show you.
Absolutely, man. The underneath, what really got me is going into that sub environment,
Hmm.
what you were talking about with the particulates in the water. They did a good job at using that. It kind of applied the same effect as they applied in Limbo with that grain filter effect over the lens itself.
Right.
And the way they incorporated that into the sub environment was excellent. And what you said with the lighting, it was really striking to me the way that light, the spotlight that you have attached to your submarine, the way it highlighted, like for example, the girl following you around under the water, the way it highlighted her was both really eerie and made for really cool visual effects. One thing that I really noticed, and I think most people will really notice when they first play Inside, is the actual addition of color to this game.
Hmm.
Because as of now, people associate Play Dead and Limbo as a black and white monochrome color
Yeah.
palette, and this really breathes some new life into the game. And like you said, with a minimalistic approach,
Right.
like none of the characters have faces, but you still get that sense of a full character, even though it's not a hyper detailed character that some are used to in these AAA titles. You still get a full character experience.
I agree. I think like I wanted to like a lot of the characters. I mean, even some of like I started feeling for like some of the I guess you want to like clone or mindless, people that are in this game.
Right.
And I really like with the whole minimalistic approach, you kind of would almost think like you wouldn't care too much about them. But you deeply care about this boy and like what happens to him throughout the game, and I think that's really awesome. Also, I don't know if you caught this too, like playing through it, like you start off in the forest and you're like working your way through, and like it just like seamlessly worked through like these beautiful environments where you're like going from the forest to the farm, and then into like this like I don't know, like industrial area, maybe a
Right.
city type that kind of thing, and then it just keeps going. And I just enjoyed just that step where it was almost just like a flawless transition. I just thought they just beautifully pulled that off.
I mean, Playdead's pulled that off perfectly in Limbo as well. The transitions from environment to environment, with it being a side scroller. Usually with side scrolling games, it's not a continuous scene that you play through. You have levels, right? So
Right.
you have that break to where they can establish a new environment. And Playdead's the whole way they approach this as to make it one fluid movement across to where it seems much more like a journey than than stages themselves.
Right, with like the loading screens and such like that from like other
Right.
games. Yeah.
It was executed perfectly. There's no loading screen in the entire game, so it seems like you're on that mission that this kid is on, or this person that you're playing is on. They did an excellent job with smoothing in this game, I think,
Hmm.
with and they added that 3D aspect to the
Yeah,
game
which I really
versus
enjoyed.
yeah, versus to where Limbo was more of a 2D, and like you said, it's a 2.5D, whatever you want to call it. It had that little bit of 3D aspect to it where it added a lot of depth to your field of vision.
Hmm.
And not only the 3D aspect, but the actual background of the game, everything happening in the background was much more active than it was in Limbo. And that just to me is a big step forward for Playdead and their natural progression as a developer.
Yeah, I also think like, I mean, Limbo does this like too with the whole seamless like going through all the environments, but I thought it pulled off. It was way more, I guess, pulled off better. I don't know what the term I want to use there, but um, in Inside because I thought it was still a little bit jerky in Limbo because they went through like a forest and then it was just I don't know it was like a really harsh environment next. They didn't have that smooth transition that I really enjoyed in this one.
I
It was
can
just my
understand
opinion.
that. I think that Limbo kind of utilized, if you look at Limbo, a lot of your transitions into different environments were due to some action that you had performed. You fell through something, or you moved across. Like it was a much sharper action. When we look at it here in Inside, you're transitioning through with much more fluid movement. You're sliding down a rooftop into the next area, or you're like getting into a submarine. So your transitions are actually part of your required movement to progress through the game. So they did a very good job with incorporating transitions with necessary movements for the game rather than just plugging them in there just to force you into the next area.
The sound's another good one, and we were talking about this before the show. Is like sound plays such an important part in this game, and it's almost like it needs to be talked about in every category because it adds to every category. I think in this game, you think that's true, Brutal?
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. I'm a huge proponent of using sound, or in this case, and Playdead's case, in both of these titles, lack thereof. They do such a good job, and I mentioned this in the indie discussion last week on Console Corner that Limbo did a great job with providing minimal sound, but accentuating your character themselves. It makes you focus on what your character's doing,
Hmm.
their steps in the blades of grass, the way they fall, and they did the same thing here in Inside, and I love that. I'm a huge fan of the way that they utilize sound in this game, and we were debating on whether we needed to include it in the graphics portion or something else later in the show, just because you're right, it has an impact on all the categories and all of the game as a whole rather than just one specific spot, looking at it as sound as a sole uh, utility of the game.
Yeah, I agree. Hats off to the composer, man. He did a fantastic job. Like, I mean, just going through the forest and then you go into that farm and it starts to rain and it's just how it's hitting off everything. It's just making these beautiful sounds and just the little chicks running around. It's like it's just
Yeah,
great, man. It's great to listen to.
unfortunately come to. I was like, God, that is so savage.
But it worked out well though. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed that puzzle though.
I did too.
All right, let's go ahead and get on to the gameplay. This is the most important category of them all. If the gameplay sucks, you simply just will not have a good time playing the game. So how do we feel about the gameplay? I'll let you take this one, Brutal.
Gameplay. I am in awe with what they did with the gameplay in this game. Now, granted, it's similar to Limbo. These games aren't drastically different as far as gameplay goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they added small things, and what going back to what you said previously, they did so much with so little, right?
Agreed.
So the first thing that I noticed, well, not the first thing, but the first thing that I want to talk about, because it had, I think, in my opinion, some of the biggest impact in the game, was the fact that you're able to swim and you're able to get into the water actually this time. Like the water was your feared enemy in Limbo, right?
Right.
And coming into this game, you have to swim. Now, granted, you have limited breath, which is expected.
Yeah, I mean you're human after all. You
Well,
can't
for the
like.
first part of the game at
Yeah.
least. But it added so much more environment to explore. It opened up a whole nother side of the environment that Limbo kind of shied away from.
Right.
And I don't mean to keep drawing comparisons between the two, but
But you kind of have to in this game because they're just so similar. I mean, like in
but not
Limbo.
only
Go
yeah,
ahead.
but not only that is like you need to draw comparisons to it because this is their follow-up IP.
Right.
Like this is their
Right.
second in their line. They only have two as far as I know, unless they have some obscure uh, free-to-play flash game on the internet that they made. And
Yeah.
shout out to whatever hater wants to go dig that up. But um, the swimming, the water movement, I really liked a lot. The puzzles, the puzzles. Good God, the puzzles.
The puzzles.
Now, both of these games are puzzlers, so of course this is going to be a big main topic of the gameplay discussion.
Yep.
And what I wanted to discuss is a lot of the consensus that I've been gathering from the community that has played it is just you, a couple others that I've talked to. Everyone seems to think that the puzzles are easier, and
Yep. I
initially,
think that.
as I played through, I mean, I ripped through these puzzles. I didn't really have too much of a struggle playing them.
Hmm.
What about you? Did you have really much trouble figuring it out? Because as I recall, going back to Limbo, like I hated my fucking life trying to get some of those puzzles figured out.
Yeah, I honestly didn't have much trouble at all with some of the puzzles. I think there was only like one or two puzzles that it was more of like trying to shoot the box up to where it needed to go, which was more of a physics thing than really, not getting the puzzle.
Which one are you talking about exactly?
Like further on in the game, you get that there's like this the cube on a pole, and then you have to shoot it up, hit the platform to knock it off into the
Okay,
room, and then
okay.
fly that one up onto the next thing to get it into the next room. I already knew like how to solve the puzzle, but I only felt myself struggling to just guide that cube where I wanted it to go. Is really the only.
You're talking about the one where you had to sit it on the angle, right?
Yeah,
Where it was
exactly,
like the dip in
exactly.
the floor, and you had to
Yep, that's the
position
one.
it to where it would shoot at the correct angle to go over that
Yep,
ledge.
yep, correct.
See, I didn't find that's why I love these kind of discussions, and that's why I think like a lot of our viewers are gonna like these discussions is because there's different viewpoints, right? And
Hmm.
that's what these casual reviews kind of lend themselves to is giving everybody a true perspective of the game from a couple different viewpoints because I didn't have too much trouble with that. The one that I found most difficult was the entire one with the counter where you had to round up where
All
you
the
had to round up
guys.
all the drones
Yeah, yeah.
and then guide them back to that platform to open that door.
Hmm.
Which that door was a really cool mystery in itself. Figuring
Yeah.
out what that big boom was behind that door was really cool.
But see, again,
Uh,
like, I didn't find it like hard. I just found that it just had multiple things to do, which just made it take longer, but not
yeah.
necessarily make it harder. Which is
Well,
kind
that
of like,
yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of these were more not necessarily difficult, but just tedious
right,
and time
exactly, time
consuming.
consuming. Yeah,
They
yeah,
were much. I mean, everything was on a bigger scale in this game.
right.
Uh,
But I mean, that's where I keep going back to. Like, I've discussed this with a lot of people on Twitter and stuff too. Is like I keep going back to where I think the puzzles were better in Limbo because I thought they were harder to figure out. Like some of those puzzles, you really had to like, all right, what am I supposed to do here? And really think about like how you're going to attack it because I mean, even in the gravity parts of Limbo, like that's very difficult to like just time your movements perfectly. And that's kind of where this one you could just kind of play through, like even if you don't really like a puzzler game, like you wouldn't have any problems like getting through this game at all. Like it would just be like just regularly playing a game.
so okay, so with that being said, and I wanted to ask this question, and I really want to know some other people's opinion as well. Whoever's watching this, if you could leave some comments,
Hmm.
I really want to know Do you think that these puzzles were truly easier, or do we have the? Are we used to how Play Dead? We got a preview on Limbo, so we know how Play Dead kind of does their thing because the Limbo puzzles were very hard coming up to them. Do do we going into this game? We're aware of what to look for now, so you kind of have that preconceived um, idea of what we need to look for as we're going through the game. So we know to go back and check that thing that looked kind of out of place back there. Like
Hmm.
when you were playing Limbo, there was a vine hanging down, or there was a little rock or something that you didn't really pay too much attention to until you had to backtrack 3 times, or in some people's cases, you had to watch the review finally to see like how the hell do you get past this part, and there's some inconspicuous rock sitting there that you have to go kick and it like rolls down a hill or something, or just some ridiculous thing that triggers a set of events that actually lead you to be able to progress through the game. I found myself looking through that and being much more aware as I played through Inside than I did when the first time I played Limbo. What do you think about that?
I could see where you're coming from there. Like if you played Limbo, maybe this game would be easier puzzles to you. I didn't necessarily like. I didn't have that feeling where I thought like playing these puzzles were just because I was just really good at puzzles. I didn't have that kind of feeling. Like I played Limbo and they had some grueling tough puzzles. Like you really didn't know what you were doing. You just had to like test over and over and over again and then being like, okay, this is what I got to do after like the 15th time I died trying to figure it out. Whereas Limbo, I mean, as Inside, it's very simple. I mean, they the mechanics of the puzzles are just superb, have tons of polish, they work perfectly, but it's not that same like I have to try it over and over and over to figure it out. So that's kind of where I'm struggling to be like, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I just don't think it was that way for me.
No, I'm not completely disagreeing with you. Like some of the puzzles that I played on Limbo, I was like, how dare they even have the fucking audacity to make me try to like figure this out? Like even in the discussion last week on Console Corner, I didn't even. I told you guys straight up. I there was puzzles that I got through and I didn't even know how I did it.
Hmm.
It just happened. I got to the point and sometimes I was so frustrated that I button mashed and it was like, oh, okay, that worked. I'm gonna like keep going.
Hmm.
And in that sense, I didn't have that. I didn't have that same frustration in this game. And
Yeah.
as much as I want to say I enjoyed it, part of the allure of these games is the difficult puzzles. So
Right. And that's what I was looking forward to coming into this game was just those difficult puzzles and just trying to figure it out. I just love those type of games. And I still enjoy this game very much so, but I just thought that, they missed something where they could have just done
yeah,
a bit more. They could have pushed it a bit more.
one of
Um,
my favorite additions to the gameplay and like the actual mechanics and
mhm.
required mechanics that they introduced to you as a part of a staple for the game were those little mind control hats.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought that was really really fun, and the way they incorporated them, even you had to they incorporated them evenly throughout the game to where it was partially necessary to get through just the game, but
Hmm.
also as part of some of the achievements you had to use them as well. So they did a good job at balancing and not just having it be a one-time puzzle. It was kind of a general theme. I want to say it's the like those glowing worms from Limbo.
Right.
They got into your brain and made you walk different ways. I think that was Inside's version of those worms.
Yeah, for sure. I also think like coming from Limbo, you kind of knew what you're getting into this game. It's very like you're just going from left to right. You're jumping. You're interacting with the environment. Like if you played Limbo, you played this game. Like as far as that's concerned. But what I really liked is just the refreshing new things that they added, like the sub, the mind control. It just adds like just so much more to the gameplay. And even those booster like cube things that just flew in the air. I thought those were really interesting and how you had to figure out how to use those as well. Again,
Mhm.
they've added so much more to the game.
I mean, the additions kind of go with the theme of the theme of the whole game, the whole premise of like the questionable. Is this an alien invasion? Is this a failed government experiment? Like, what's going on here? it and you look at Limbo was very was a I just felt more organic as far as the puzzles go. It wasn't very high tech. I mean, the most high tech you got were I guess you had the gravity swap kind of thing, but
Hmm.
this just seemed, if you look at it chronologically, Inside's taking place in a almost different universe at this point.
Yeah, I
There's
agree.
they both capture that eerie feeling as you play through,
Hmm.
but this one felt more of like not your Limbo focused on the kid and his sister, and you felt that sense of despair for him.
And this one
But when
feels
you,
like they were like something's going on in this world, and you're like out to like
yeah,
solve the issue.
yeah,
Yeah.
like this one felt like shit's going down, like everybody's fucking dying, like something's going on here.
Yeah.
Like that puzzle where you're walking and you have to copy like the clone's movements.
Hmm.
You and I talked. That was one of our favorite puzzles throughout the game. It was
Yeah, that was
really
a great
fun,
puzzle. That was
and you
fantastic.
have that. It's almost that Big Brother feeling where
Right.
everybody's like watching over you
Everybody's
because
watching you,
yeah,
waiting
because
for that mistake.
yeah, that camera's watching you the whole time,
Yeah.
and it's stressful as fuck. Like
It
you
was
get to
stressful.
that, you
You
get to
got some
that point,
tension, man.
right? Yeah, I mean, it builds the tension. And it goes back to what we said again. They do so much with so little. Like
Hmm.
this game is not a AAA multi-million-dollar platform. Like it's an indie game.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here like I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Like Jesus Christ, like the storyline. Bravo play dead. Like you guys have hit two out of the park in my opinion, and like it was they did a really good job. They did a good job with following up. So the gameplay was solid, very solid for myself.
I agree. Like I think this is where the game shines the most is in the gameplay design and you know how they set everything up. You know, there's an argument for whether the puzzles were hard enough or not, and that's just kind of you know the gamer's preference and stuff like that. But I think overall, yeah, you know the gameplay was just spot on, super polished. It felt
Yeah,
really good to play.
absolutely.
Awesome.
The
Good.
the last plug that I want to put in right here about the gameplay. Super spoiler alert. This is one of the biggest parts of the game. If you've listened this far and it hasn't spoiled it enough already, please don't continue to listen. But we have to address the giant elephant in the room, or in this case, the giant conglomeration of fucking bodies in the room. What the like that last fucking 20 minutes of the game, bro? Like just smashing through walls like a bull in a china shop, and you're
Yeah.
just this big fucking thing. Like, oh my god, my brain just like was melting by the second as I played through that. And it hit you out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, like the gameplay as far as that's concerned, because I want to touch on this in the story when we get to it, but
Yeah,
the gameplay and the mechanics of that whole thing was really neat. Like once you took over that like amalgamation of body parts there and you started controlling and just wreaking havoc throughout the building. Again, spoilers, guys. Like this is the end of the game here, so it felt really awesome. It really did. Like you just had like, and it's kind of weird. Like you almost felt like you had superpowers, but really when you looked at yourself, you're like, oh my god, you're like some weird experiment gone
yeah.
wrong kind of thing.
You're a clusterfuck person, is what you are.
Yeah, for sure.
But you touched it perfectly right there. That's what I wanted to mention too. Is like you go through this game as being so frail, right?
Right.
You fall too far, you're dead. You do this, you're dead. You get touched by that fucking girl from the ring swimming through the water, you're dead. You stay in the water too long, you're dead. You're a very fragile character,
Right.
and that's been the theme throughout both of Playdead's games. And then you get to this part, and you're a super maniac monster, literally plowing through, just plowing through walls to the point where you hit this dude and you fall down. You remember the part where you get the guy and you fall with him out of the building and you just disintegrate him underneath you when you
Yeah.
hit the
Yeah.
floor?
Yeah. Just splat.
Yeah. It's such a switch of power. It makes you feel that rush of like, oh, like you're unstoppable at that point. Like,
Absolutely.
and granted, it's for a 10 or 15 minute segment of the game, but it just flips the game on its head.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was an excellent addition. As weird as it was, it was a really good addition to the game. Put a big spin on it at the end. it really changed up your play style for those last 10 or 15 minutes.
I agree 100%. Cool. I think we nailed the gameplay there. Now moving on to our last category of our game discussion / review before we give our verdict, and that is story. And what did we think about the story? Yeah, so here's where it started off really good for me and then just took a big nosedive towards the end, but we'll get into that. What's really cool about like Playdead Studios' story is they put you in these situations that you have no dialogue whatsoever, and they pretty much let your brain fill in the gaps of, almost like narrating the story for you. I mean, I'm sure they have like some progression in how they want you to think the story is, but I find myself like going through, like thinking of what situation is this boy and this world into? Like, is it taken over by aliens because there's like crazy mind control going on? Are these just like alien humans that you can just control? Is this just like a government experiment? I just love that about like Playdead. They just do so well with like letting you invent the story as we go through.
Yeah.
There's some interesting points I wanted to make too. Is like, and this kind of goes into like how I thought like this could have been like aliens. It's like these worm things that were in these pigs, which was terrifying and hilarious at the same time.
You rip that worm right out of that pig's ass and it goes squealing across the map. I'm dying, dude.
It was hilarious. Like, and just how they set it up too. You're like walking through and you're seeing all these dead pigs everywhere, what you perceive to be dead pigs, and then you're seeing like these wiggly things like coming out of their ass, really. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then you walk further on, and all of a sudden it just like jumps at you, and you're like, oh shit. And then you get to the point where you just like rip it out, and you find out it's a worm, and I'm just like, man, what is going on here? So that just harkens back to like, I thought this was like an alien takeover kind of crazy thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall I really enjoyed the story. All the way up until the last 15 minutes. And where it broke it for me is where you get to the end and you see all these, like, I guess, workers or scientists or whatever the case may be. And let me preface this about, you're playing through the whole beginning of the game, and people are out to kill you, like, just snuff you out. Dogs are killing you, like, these little girls in the water. Everything's just trying to kill you. And then it's like this jarring twist at the end where I'm around all these people that were trying to kill me, but now running past me, like, they could care less or didn't even know I was there at that point. And I found that kind of odd. And then we get into where we find out what's going on. I'm going to try and not, like, spoil it too much for everybody. But you get into this tank and you find out it's kind of like an experiment to an extent. And then we get into that, like, whole superpowered amalgamation of body parts. And how, after you get over the initial shock of that and how cool it is, you spend the next 15 minutes just like extending the gameplay for no reason, or extending the story for really no reason.
Yeah.
I almost go ahead.
It's just the gameplay at that point, like you said, it doesn't add to the storyline. It doesn't add to the timeline of the story.
Right.
But at the same time, like, it's a cool flip to me, like going from being everybody's trying to kill you to now everybody's running away from you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Like, I think it was a perfect twist in a sense to where, but I think it just didn't pay off at the end is where I guess I had the problem with it. Is like, it just felt like mindless, just running around destroying. It didn't extend the story. It didn't really help me understand anything. It literally just made me more confused about what was going on. All the way up until the last like scene there, I was just like, what?
Yeah, that whole part is kind of out of character for both of these IPs, really. I mean, if you think about it, because that whole last part, you're rampaging through. There's virtually no puzzle solving aside from that. As far as I can remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the only thing that I can really think of as far as a puzzle solving portion goes is lighting that box on fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that's about it.
Getting it over those sprinklers. And then once you get it up, and then once you get past that part, it's just a continuation of this rampage until you get to the end.
I want to hear like your point of view of you know, how it flipped on you, because it goes from everybody's trying to kill you to everybody doesn't care you're there, and then it flips, and then everybody's trying to help you essentially like escape.
Yeah.
Like,
All right.
how did you
So
feel
here's
about that
my
whole thing?
here's my take on that. And ever since you and I first brought it up together, because we were kind of playing through the last part of the game, in party, so we kind of were talking as we were playing through it.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since then, I've been, because I tend to like think back on the game that I played, and this one really sticks in your mind just because of the fucking just shock. I don't know if it's just the shock
I
factor
think that's what
alone,
it is. Yeah.
but is it just me, or did this game really just like stick with you for the next couple of days, like that you just thought about it? I don't know if it's because I knew we had this review coming up and I was thinking about it and trying to like put thoughts together, or if it just was truly like that shocking, because it really is that fucking weird at the end.
Yeah. Well, like from what I've seen from Twitter and a couple of people I've talked to, it definitely stuck with them too. So I think it's just maybe that shock that you're just like, I can't believe what just happened, and I don't know
Yeah,
how
like
I
did I
feel
really
about
just
it.
play that, or like it's so out there that it has to stick with you, unless you're brain dead, like it. Okay, so back to the topic, the Switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I'm thinking: these people, this experiment was either going on as scheduled, and the people that are running this whole facility that you're at thought they had everything under control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Business as usual. And as you're progressing through, and you get to the point where people start not noticing you, did something go wrong to where they don't really care that you're there anymore because there's a bigger problem? Or is it because I'm trying to put that together too, because that it was just as jarring to me. You
Right.
spend the entire game dodging, hiding behind things, hiding in the shadows from these spotlights, hiding from robots, hiding from people trying to shoot you, running from dogs. Everything's trying to kill you the entire time, like you said. And now all of a sudden, within a 5-minute span from the last guy that just tried to find me to now, people don't give a shit. Like, you run up to the glass and you're looking at that big observation deck where
Yeah, and the
everybody
dude's
else.
like looking at you and didn't even care you were
People
there.
just literally step back. And, "Yo, what's up, dude? You want to
Yeah.
check this out? Like, there's fucking things in here." And
We
like,
were shooting you
I
5
don't know
minutes
what's
ago,
going
but
on. Yeah, but like, my bad about the fucking fully automatic weapons on the adolescent child running through the woods.
right.
Forget that. And I
Yeah.
also want to know, like, what the hell happened to all the rest of the clones that are running around the place? Like, where'd they go?
Yeah.
Shit went downhill hard.
I don't know if this
And
was like intentional or not, but it just, man, I don't, and it, like I thought about that too. Like you were saying, like was stuff just starting to go wrong, and something didn't stick to the script or whatnot. And I thought about that until I started
just to be
seeing
clear,
like
we're talking about sticking to the script in the world of Inside, not
inside,
actually
yeah,
the developers sticking to the script of what they wanted to write.
correct, yeah,
Just
yeah. This is all what happened in the game itself. Um, and I thought about like them, like okay, you escaped, so the natural thing they probably would have done is try to capture you, but instead it felt like even in some of like the points in the game, like the guy's like pulling the cube to like start it up for you so you can help you escape, and I'm kind of like, why is he helping me? He should be trying to capture me.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think I don't know if that part was. See, I was thinking that too. Was he trying to help you escape? Because, and it's a little foggy for me,
Yeah,
but I feel like that cube was. No, no, you're right.
yeah.
Don't you throw
You
it
throw
up
it
to
up
him?
to him, and then
Yeah, and
he
he's just
pulls on
like,
it. Like,
"Here, bro, let me
yeah,
get you out of
exactly.
here,
I'm just
fucking
like,
monster,
what?
Frankenstein motherfucker! Like, get out of here!"
Exactly, exactly. And
Like,
I was just like,
I don't like,
what?
maybe it was to the point where it was like, so you have like a bear attack, right? And everybody at first is trying to attack the bear and get it out of there because they're afraid of it, but then eventually you're like, all right, well, let's just help it get out of here so it doesn't cause any more damage.
Maybe,
So you
maybe
think
that's it.
like maybe it was like, all right, well, this is our chance to get it out of here, so get him out of here.
But if it, and here's where it comes down to, and this is probably by design from Play Dead, is they let you fill in the parts of the story that are missing with your imagination and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, I was just like, if this is a government experiment, if this is like their thing, I don't think they want it to get out to let people see what they're doing. So it was just, I don't know. The whole last 15 minutes of story was just really odd, out of place for me, and I don't know. It just wasn't jiving for me, and it kind of, at that point, I was like dinging the game because I just it was so just out of place for me.
Yeah, I mean it was very out of place. I mean, I spoke to, or you said you had spoken to a couple of people, and I kind of heard through the grapevine that the last 15 minutes were game breaking, or not game breaking, but just they broke the mold as far as like what goes with like the ending of a game. And
Hmm.
I'm just anticipating this, and then I get to this part, and it ended because right, you fall through, and then you land at that bank of the river or whatever you're at,
Right, and then credits
and
roll,
he's
and
laying
that's it.
there,
He doesn't
and you're laying
move.
there for a second, and I'm hoping like, all right, what's happening next? And
Yeah.
then the credits start rolling, and I'm like, no, that's not right.
Hmm.
It was so abrupt. So you go through this entire adventure, right? And when you get to the point where you become this monster or whatever, you go on this rampage. So you go from tactical play, puzzle solving, rampage, and then done.
Hmm.
So
And nothing
there's
after that.
yeah, and then nothing. It's done. You're dead. Like it's game over.
Which is weird
The,
too.
the credits roll.
Like you were saying, you're going through like this carnage, like you're destroying the building, like you're breaking stuff down, and then you find a way out. You're like tumbling down this hill, and then all of a sudden that's hurting you, and you can't get up. Oh well, I should preface that like we don't know if you can't or not, but in that whole cutscene, you don't move at all. So it's like I just didn't get it, man. Like they lost me there.
yeah. One thing that really that I was kind of upset about, that one thing that really grabbed my attention was that whole series, that whole sequence of the game where you have to hide behind everything because that force is just what would
Oh
disintegrate your
yeah,
body. It would blow you off the map, and you'd literally break up into a bunch of parts.
right. And how cool that was, and amazing
Like,
that was, but I was like, we never got back to why it was doing that.
yeah, it
There's
doesn't
no
explain it at
context for it.
all. There's like, and that was really cool. Like because you got introduced to that part, going through that puzzle where you had to gather all the bodies and put them on the platform,
Hmm.
and you saw the doors like booming and shaking. Everything was shaking,
Yeah.
and then you get in there, and you're getting a little bit closer to it because now you're actually being affected by it. And then once you get past that sequence, it never gets visited again.
Right. Never.
And it
No. Not even like a little scene of like some hammer or something like amplified to the umpteenth degree doing it. Nothing. It's just you're going through a
yeah,
room. These percussions are coming through and they can destroy you, and that's it. Like that was just odd too. It was a great gameplay, like
yeah,
mechanic and environment, but I wanted to know more about that.
I did too. Like I was expecting to that was going to be part of the end game. There is
Hmm.
what was it, whatever was
Yeah.
doing that.
Exactly.
Like you're
Exactly.
getting closer and closer to the source of this
What's that? Yeah.
destructive force. Like
Yeah.
it's that thing's fucking things up. Like
For
the second
real.
you open up those blast doors in that office area, and that percussion is destroying whole rooms,
Exactly.
shattering glass, blowing furniture away, and you never see it anymore. So
Exactly.
I don't know what it is. I'm going to be continuously wondering. Play Dead Devs, if you ever come across this video and you're listening, DM me on Twitter because I want
Give us
to
the
know
backstory.
what the hell that's supposed to be.
For real.
Um,
But I think like overall, like I do think like the story was great. I think the ending is where everybody's like finding an issue with it. Me as well. Some people really enjoyed it. I just found it jarring. It just took me out of the immersion. I was already like, man, I love what's going on right now. But you know, this is where the game fell for me. Like this point right here.
I agree. They did such a good job with setting up like that eerie, like you're being hunted
Mm-hmm.
vibe. And I was fully under the impression as we were talking throughout while we were playing, is like, is this aliens? Is this some police state like dystopian
Right.
like environment to where like just like mankind is being shut down?
Right. I agree, man.
And it kind of came up shorthanded to me at the end. I don't, and don't get me wrong, anybody listening right now, like thoroughly enjoyed the game. The
Absolutely.
ending is just underwhelming.
Exactly.
Um,
Definitely for me too.
the game was very good in my opinion. It's
And
just
it's
the ending was
uh,
just
and that's where I just it's just so irritating right now because the beat, the tempo, the everything, like 2/3 of the way through, fantastic, man. I was so into it, and then what the hell? I don't,
right. I mean, and that almost makes it more disappointing, right? The
yeah,
fact that the first 3 quarters of the game were so good,
exactly.
and when that ending falls short, but that's a risk that they played. Like
Yeah,
making a game so good, you got to come up with the ending that's going to be really good too.
yeah, for
And
sure,
that's
for
that's
sure.
hard. I understand to do, but at the same time, like, ugh, it's really a big it's really a big punch to the gut when you're actually talking about the overall enjoyment of the game.
I agree. All right, let's go ahead and we killed all our three topics. Let's go ahead and move into the verdict. That was a great talk, but now we want to go into our verdict. Do we buy? Do we sell? Do we wait for a deal? Do we straight flush this turd down the crapper? So what are the pros and cons of Inside? I'll go ahead and let you start with the pros.
Pros: improved gameplay for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The addition of the extra puzzles, the extra utility of your environment. That's a huge pro for this game. The graphical content of the game is awesome. The way they smoothed it out, kind of added the 3D, or in the words of the governor, the 2.5D. Um, and just the story up until the end is excellent. I mean,
I agree.
pros, the fact that you can swim is a big pro, and it's not just, don't take it for its surface content. The fact that that you can swim is cool, but at the same time, it adds so much more to the utility of your environment. You can
I agree.
swim and explore a whole nother side of the world that you really couldn't have access to in Playdead's previous title. So those are the biggest pros to me. And what about you? What do you think about the pros?
Yeah, like my pros is it plays like Limbo, and what I mean by that is it's an accessible game. Like anyone, that can move the stick left, right, and hit a couple of buttons can play this game. I think that's a great benefit towards it. I also think a pro is the art style, like we've stated, like even from Limbo and this game, is they do so much with so little, and that's fantastic to see. Again, like picking up one of yours is I love the storytelling, and how they let you fill in the narrative and what's going on and trying to figure out or adding story elements to it. I think that's fantastic. I love that kind of storytelling. And also just the butter smooth gameplay. Just everything works the way it should be. There was no bugs. It was just a fantastic experience. Let's go ahead and move on to the cons. What was your biggest negatives of the game?
Well, if you haven't been able to tell from the rest of this review, and spoiler alert again, if I I'm sure you're gonna say the same thing, GKB. The only real con to this game um, was that ending, man. I mean, I don't have any other complaints about the game. I mean, there
It's
was
interesting.
maybe the puzzle, the
Yeah.
puzzles were a little bit easier,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what we've come to expect from Playdead. Is their uh,
Great puzzles.
over the top puzzles. The puzzles are very extremely creative. The way they use the entire environment to progress puzzles maybe wasn't as intense as it was in Limbo, but at the same time, the puzzles were on a grander scale, right?
Yep.
So they weren't as difficult, but they were on a bigger scale, which required more tedious work. So that maybe they replaced just sheer difficulty with time-consuming puzzles.
Yeah. I agree.
Um, but the biggest con has to be the ending, and
Yeah, it's one of mine as well.
some people are going to crucify that statement, but at the same time,
You're giving your
we're
honest
here.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're here for an honest opinion. We're here for everybody to come get a slice of what the game's like before they decide if they want to spend their money on it. So
Exactly. Um, so my cons. is this kind of an interesting thing, but I put it plays like Limbo. And what I mean by that is there's not much more new to the gameplay style that, if you played Limbo, you played this game at its core gameplay. I
I
would
can
have
agree with
liked
that.
I would have liked to have seen, like, especially when they're using the 3D environment, is, maybe just do a little bit more. Maybe we could have, advanced in that 3D world, instead of just left and right, maybe going in all the other directions as well. I think that would have added some more to the gameplay. That's not a huge con. That's just, really nitpicking.
Not to cut you off, but that what you said about being able to utilize the different directions with it being a more 3D environment,
Hmm.
I actually tried moving up and down some of the like in like deeper into the field of view and
Right.
utilizing that 3D, and then I realized that that's just not a thing.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah, I've done that a couple of times too. I was like, oh man, I wish I could have just moved over there,
Yeah,
but nah, you can't. So like I said, that's nitpicking maybe. I think they just could have done a little bit more. The stuff they did add, like the swimming and the other things, was really cool. But again, I think this is also a con. Again, the last 15 minutes of the game is where the story just like destroyed it for me, and I was having a fantastic time until then. But that took it away. And for me, again, it's the puzzles. Like, even though they were perfect, the gameplay was superb. I thought they were too simplistic. But maybe that's to get more of the audience. I don't know. But for me, coming from Limbo, I expected a harder puzzles. I enjoyed that about Limbo, and I was hoping I would get the same from this, but I didn't, in my opinion.
what I
Um,
get what I get from the puzzle portion is maybe they weren't necessarily too simplistic, but they were more obvious, right? Like
yeah, that could
Limbo
be
did a good job with hiding
how you
and
do it.
making you look for how to actually get that puzzle even initiated. Like
Hmm.
there's objects that you needed to backtrack and find to make your puzzle work.
Yeah, that's a good
These were
point.
kind of set up a little bit easier. The objects you needed to use for them were a little more obvious. The path that you needed to take was a little more obvious. But like I said, kind of utilized the expansive environment more than just sheer difficulty of the puzzle. So
I agree. I agree. All right, so what's our verdict? What do you give this game, man? Is it a buy, rent, or flush it down the toilet, man?
the game's definitely a buy, in my opinion. Aside from the ending, the game as a whole was an awesome experience. I loved every portion of it. I didn't want to stop playing it. I wanted to play it through in one sitting because the game from the beginning draws you into, and I don't know if it's the hype that was created about the game,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it's definitely a buy. I'm sorry, Spence, if you're listening, Phil Spencer. This game's not game of the year,
I agree.
but it's a very good game. Despite the ending, definitely go buy it, pick it up. It's enjoyable. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat. But if you're listening to this before you play it, might have ruined it for you. We gave you fair warning though, so
Yes, we did. Spoiler alerts. Spoiler alerts. Um, for me, man, I was going back and forth, man. I was like teetering on the wait for a sale or buy it, but after thinking about it, I definitely think this is a game that people should play. I definitely think you should go out and buy this. If you haven't played this and you're listening to this review and you're still kind of on the fence, wait for a sale. But I definitely think at some point you should definitely pick this up. I definitely think it's a buy as well.
absolutely. I mean, it was a good follow up to their initial IP.
Yeah,
Like you said, it was similar. I mean, you could definitely tell it's a play dead game for sure.
absolutely. There's
Like
no
the
doubt in
art
my mind.
style, like that's all play dead all day, every
Yeah.
day.
As far as like a game of the year, because I've heard that spouted by multiple media outlets and some other people on Twitter and stuff like that, and I don't discredit their opinion. If that's what they thought, that's fantastic. But for me, I don't think this is game of the year. Maybe indie game of the year. I don't know. We have to see We Happy Few and a bunch of other ones that are coming out. So
Hyper light, dude.
yeah, Hyperlight Drifter does look cool, man. I can't wait to play that as well. Anything else to add before we get out of here?
No, I mean, probably going to be doing a spotlight on this on console corner too. So if you
Cool.
guys are listening to this before Console Corner airs, there's going to be some more talk about it. But definitely get out there and get your hands on it. Do whatever you need to do. Enter into a bunch of Gleam contests if that's what you want to do, if you don't want to spend the money on it. But do anything you can to get your hands on the game because it's super enjoyable.
Yeah.
All the way up until the last, like, literally the last, like, it's only the last 10 minutes that are kind of like a letdown.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But
I
it's
agree.
thoroughly enjoyable from beginning to almost the end.
I agree. Fantastic game, great gameplay, great storytelling up to the last 10 minutes, as we stated a bunch of times, but definitely worth a playthrough. All right, I want to thank everyone who watches this review. We really appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, click the shit out of that like button. If you didn't, well, you know what to do. This is GKB and BrewtalKnight. Take care of your fellow gamers, everyone.